Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on misplacedstraws.com where music comes to life. And my guests today are an up and coming guitarist and a legendary drummer who have joined together to make a record called The Gathering. It's out on June 6th, and it's one of the most interesting instrumental records I've heard in a long time. Please welcome Jamie Holka and Bobby Rondinelli. Welcome, guys.
Jeff, how
Hi,
you doing?
how are you,
Great.
Jeff?
Doing great. Now, Bobby, everybody knows you from Rainbow, Blue Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, countless others. Jamie, fairly new to the national scene. How did the two of you guys come together?
I was a dating site for adults.
It was a park and ride.
Yeah, yeah, I answered an ad. It said burly Italian looking for a guy that sounds Polish. Um, well, I had become friends with the old Rainbow Deep Purple road manager, Colin Hart, and I was always a fan of Bobby's, and I wanted to do some recording, and I researched Bobby's more recent stuff because I obviously knew his 80s and 90s stuff. And I noticed he refined himself differently, a little more jazz in his playing. And I says, man, I just thought we would we would work well together. And so I reached out to Colin Hart to see if he could get a hold of Bobby for me. He did it. And me and Bobby started doing some long distance recording, and it just went from there.
And now, Bobby, you've played with some amazing guitar players in your career, but what was it about Jamie's style and sound that intrigued you?
Well, Jamie's definitely has his own thing. He's kind of jazzy and rocky and a great sense of rhythm. Um, and we just hit it off. The first track he sent me, I really liked. Um, I screwed with it a little, and then he liked what I did with it. And make a long story short, then he came to Long Island. We were doing it remotely, and once we got together, he asked me if I wanted to produce the record, and we wrote a lot of the stuff. He would come with a riff, and then I'd give him a part, and then he'd come with a riff, and it was just like real easy. It was We just hit it off like immediately.
Now, there's a ton of special guests on the record with you guys. Talk a bit about who joined you and how you kind of got everybody together.
Go ahead, Bobby. It was well, I'll start it and let Bobby finish it. We I don't know, we were a few songs in, and we thought it might be a cool idea to do a cover song. And so I had suggested the song Brother Louie, which is Louie, 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 Louie. And Bobby said, I can get Kenny Aronson, the original bass player that played on the original recording. And I says, wow, that would be really, really cool. And so that's how the guest thing started. And then Bobby, went into the Rolodex and just started recruiting guys. But that's how it started.
Yeah, and you also have Billy Sheehan and Don Airy and a bunch of other guys on
Yeah,
it.
it's crazy.
How was it determining like which track you were going to pull each guy in on?
Bobby, what do you think of that question? I don't know. That's hard to say. You know,
Well, when you're working with some of the best people in the business, um, say you got a couple of songs with Kenny on it and a couple of songs with Danny Miranda and then
Mm-hmm.
Billy Sheen, anything you give these guys or who's the other guy that I love?
what instrument?
Bass,
Jimmy Haslip.
Jimmy
Yeah.
Haslip. You give these guys a song and 99% of the time they're making it better.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt.
They're just bringing their thing to it. And we figured we'd spread the wealth around so it wasn't just one guy. So, you make it more interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's very many albums with Jimmy Haslip, Kenny Aronson, Billy Sheehan, and Danny Miranda, you know, on it. You know what I mean? So we did it because we knew they would do great, and hopefully it would get more interest
Mm.
for the record.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this! It's got this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. You know, and they all really just knocked it out of the park.
You know what I wanted to say was when Danny Miranda, when we got a hold of Danny, we were driving to Long Island, me and Stork, the guy who was executive producer of the album. We were driving to Long Island, and I remember we were working on the ballad that's on the album called Tasty Waves. And I just called Bobby on the ride, and I says, "Hey, is Danny Miranda, and you think he's in town? You think, can we get him in the studio tomorrow?" It's kind of just something I was thinking, because I knew Bobby was tight with him, and he was somebody we were talking about maybe getting on the record. And so Bobby goes, "Let me give him a call." And so Bobby calls back 5 minutes later. He goes, "Yep." He goes, "Danny just got off the plane from doing a festival with Blue Oyster Cult in Bulgaria. He just got home." I says, "Oh man, too bad. He's probably jet lagged and tired." Bobby was like, "Nope, he's going to be at the studio tomorrow at 2:00. Danny showed up next day, 2:00 on the button, came in, had the tune charted out, and freaking, like Bobby said, we could have used the first take. We could have, but then we asked. Bobby says, "No, do it again, add some more stuff." But just like talk about like professional and just having it together. That's what makes these guys who they are. They're pros.
Yeah. And I'm a huge Jeff Beck fan. And when I heard this record, I mean, it reminded me of the days when instrumental records were a big thing, Blow by Blow, Wired, There and Back. Now, especially with instrumental records, I think most guitar players start with Eddie Van Halen and go forward. But Jamie, it sounds like your influence goes back. I mean, I hear a lot of Jeff Beck in your playing. I hear a lot of those 60s and 70s guys. Was that where your influence comes from?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Beck, man, like how do you don't want to tangle with him because he was his own voice and all that. And so but yeah, man, I listen to, I listen to other instruments too, like not just guitar players. Guitar playing gets kind of, you know what I mean? It can get guitar players are their own worst enemies, I think, with especially trying to record instrumental music. And that's why having a producer, in this case Bobby, makes all the difference in the world, because you can just shoot yourself in the foot by overplaying and thinking that people want to hear that. But yeah, I mean, influences, of course. I mean, Hendrix, Jimmy Page growing up. Richie Blackmore was like my hero of heroes as a teenager. Robin Trower, all that stuff. But then I, listened to a lot of jazz players, and I listened to all the instrumental records though growing up. I mean, my brother would filter me like El Di Meola, Jeff Beck, of course. There's a Frank Zappa album that was all just guitar solos live. I got into the shredder guys in the 80s, like a lot of us did.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Eddie Van Halen, but he's another guy, man. Like Eddie's Eddie, Jeff's Jeff. Like I never wanted to be able to be like the note for note off the record guy. I just wanted to see if I could develop a style that was maybe my own a little bit.
And as a producer on the record, Bobby, how do you approach kind of taking this material that has this really cool classic vibe to it, but making it sound modern and not sound dated? How do you approach that as a producer?
Well, first of all, I think there's a freshness about Jamie's playing that lends itself to keeping it cool. And he doesn't do any tapping or any of that shit. If he did, I would have smacked him in the head. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's, you know what I mean? It's not
been done.
That's not him or us.
Yeah.
It's more he's playing from the heart, and it's like old school based in blues in a way, and like fusiony almost and rocky almost, and not really 100% of anything, which I think is in our favor. you know, because it hits a lot of genres without being stale, and there's a lot of I think we got a lot of hooky material on the
Mm.
record.
Yep.
It's not just
Yeah.
we have nice melodies and
Mm.
cool parts and songs.
Yep.
You know, no 12-minute friggin' song that, you know, sometimes you clap because it's great, and sometimes you clap because it's fucking over.
It's over.
You know what I mean? And we didn't want any of those.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie, you had mentioned, the idea of doing a cover song. Where you guys ended up doing is kind of the centerpiece of the record, which is that amazing cover of Sergeant Pepper. How did picking that song and that arrangement come about?
Well, I had sent Bobby a video of me. I do a lot of finger style solo guitar stuff. And there's a video of me on YouTube doing Sergeant Pepper on an acoustic guitar, some percussion and some stuff going on. And I sent it to Bobby. Hey, I just want you to see something, because I didn't know if Bobby knew I did this other thing, or to what extent. So I sent it to him. He goes, "Man, we should do that. We should record that, our own version." So we did, and it was the only tune on the album that it was recorded live in the studio. It was me, Bobby, and Danny Miranda, the three of us in one room. And it was funny. Like, we were thinking, okay, let's leave ourselves a couple hours to record it. And as we did, after the second take, it was done. It was like, all right, now what do we do? And but Danny crushed it. Bobby says, hey, let's do a little 6/8 blues solo spot in there. And it just made it its own version. Something so simple like that little blues breakdown, and then it comes back to the head of the tune, on the Don area in there with the mini moog, just ripping your face off. It just came off really good and easy. And that was the song I remember traveling to Long Island from Buffalo in a snowstorm. I came by myself this time. I drove by myself, and I got caught in a snowstorm, and my windshield wiper stopped working on the ride over. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna fucking die driving to Long Island to make this album. But I just remembered it was during the Sergeant Pepper sessions that I almost died. But anyway, yeah, that's the story of that one.
Well, my wife is originally from Rochester, so
Yeah,
that
that's what
snowstorm
Snowstorm
could have
was.
been any time from June to September.
It was right after I passed Rochester. It was cars were off the road. It was nuts. I was going, oh my God. And I had one windshield wiper working. It was brutal, man. It was like but we got a song out of the session. That's all I cared about, was getting productive,
Now, will you guys be playing any shows together, or Jamie, are you going to be expanding your touring sort of outside of the New York area a little bit?
Well, we have a show June 6th for the release of the album in Buffalo. And then we're going to see what happens. I mean, it would be great if we get some opportunities. I think if the album, gets some traction, then yeah, we will definitely have some opportunities to play live, And we got Bobby and Kenny Aronson are going to be the rhythm section for that show. And so that's going to be kind of the start of we'll see where that goes.
And Bobby, you're always on the road working. What's coming up next for you in the next few months?
Well, I'm always in the studio producing or doing drum tracks. I just got back from Europe with Axel Rudy Pell, and like 2 weeks ago, I was away for 5 weeks, and we got some more shows in September, and I got to do another album with Axel. But I'm kind of always in the studio, so I'm keeping busy. Thank God.
And Jamie, do you see yourself kind of continuing to grow as a solo artist? Do you have aspirations of, putting a band together, or do you prefer sort of the solo instrumental route?
Well, I just want to break even. No, yeah, I mean, it's I've only had one opportunity to really travel, and that was with a band called Captain Beyond. I did that for a few years. We only did about 30 shows, but other than that, I'm just a working stiff, man. I play 200 plus gigs a year. and that entails solo, duo, it's acoustic stuff. I got a couple, I got a 4-piece band. I'm in a 5-piece cover band. I mean, it's just about staying employed, for me. But this opportunity right here, I mean, to do, essentially my music, but with Bobby's, the way he produced it and formed these songs into like in the end, I ended up saying, well, he's half writer, writing credit. He's got to get half because, it was my material, but it would have never sounded
Right.
It would have never came out without him. The producing, the bringing these cats in, just amazing. But as far as it goes for me, I mean, I'd be thrilled to take something like this on the road with these guys. I mean, that's not even a no question. I mean, the corner bar is always going to be here for me to play. To have an opportunity to do something original, I mean, that's ultimately where it's at for me. I think for anybody, but this is its own deal. So hopefully people like it. That's what we're waiting to see.
Well, I definitely do. It's a fun record. It's a fun listen. And as you guys said, a lot of times with instrumental records, guitar players are their own worst enemy. It turns into an hour of shredding and there's no song in it. And that's what I
Right.
really like about this record is there's songs, there's melodies. It stands on its own, and it's definitely a great listen.
Cool. Yeah, we were wondering, all the guys that we've done
Hmm.
these interviews with, seems like so far so good. It's hard to know when you're inside of the thing the way we are. You know what I mean? Like you just and me, Bobby, he goes, he knows I listen to this stuff like way too much, but that's kind of, I don't know. It's a very strange thing to try to assume how other people are going to
Yeah.
perceive it, or receive it,
Hmm.
so.
Hmm. Well, we've been spending some time here with Jamie Holka and Bobby Rondinelli. The record is called The Gathering. It's out everywhere June 6th. If you're a guitar fan or just a fan of great melodic music, this is your listen for the summer. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it, and best of luck with the record.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, man. Take
Thank
care,
you.
Jeff.
Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.